In the quiet community of Clemens, North Carolina, everyone knew about the strange man who called himself Pazuzu. They saw his filed-down teeth, witnessed his bizarre rituals, and heard the unsettling stories he'd tell. But what they didn't know was that the real horror wasn't his shocking appearance or his claims of devil worship. The real horror was buried just under the surface of his own backyard. This is the true and disturbing story of Pazuzu Algarad and the House of Horrors on Nob Hill Drive. Clemens, North Carolina is pretty much the definition of a typical American suburb. Tucked away in Forsyth County, it's the kind of place people move to raise families. A town of manicured lawns and community events. It's a place known for being heavily Christian, where Southern hospitality is the default and a sense of safety is just assumed. On a quiet street called Nob Hill Drive, the houses are modest but well kept, reflecting the peaceful nature of the community. In the early 2000s, the biggest disturbance here might have been a dog barking too late, or a teenager's music turned up a little too loud. But one house, 2749, was starting to stand out. Its red brick exterior, just like all the others, began to transform into something dark. A black painted front door appeared, covered with upside-down crosses and strange, menacing symbols. A grim energy started coming from the property, a slow creeping dread that would eventually shatter the neighborhood's illusion of safety. The residents of Nob Hill Drive were about to find out that evil doesn't always hide in dark alleys or faraway cities. Sometimes it lives right next door, turning a family home into a tomb. And the source of this darkness was a man who would become the town's own local boogeyman. He wasn't always Pazuzu. He was born John Alexander Lawson on August 12, 1978, in San Francisco, California. At some point, he and his mother, Cynthia Lawson, moved across the country to Clemens. People who knew him back then just described him as a weird goth kid, but his real transformation began around 2002. That's when John Lawson legally changed his name to Pazuzu Ila Algarad. The name was a mission statement. Pazuzu is a demonic king from mythology, famously from the movie The Exorcist. The name he chose, Ila Algarad, combines the Arabic words for God or Lord, Ila, and locust in Algarad. This wasn't just a new nickname. He was rebranding his entire existence to match his satanic beliefs. A physical transformation came next. He covered his face in a chaotic mess of tattoos. He took a Dremel tool and filed his own teeth into sharp points. It's also widely reported he had his tongue split like a snake, though that was never officially confirmed. Pazuzu was actively trying to set himself apart from the conservative Christian town he lived in. He claimed he bathed maybe once a year and never brushed his teeth, believing hygiene stripped the body of its natural defenses. His very presence was an assault on the senses, and his behavior just made things worse. He told people straight up that he was a Satanist who performed animal sacrifices. He'd brag about drinking the blood of birds and rabbits and claim he could control the weather. To the local outcasts and misfits, Pazuzu was magnetic. His home, which he shared with his mother, became a no-rules sanctuary for people on the fringe. Drugs were everywhere and black metal music was always blaring. He would hold court among his followers, which included his two fiancées, Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock. And it was in this chaotic den, surrounded by his disciples, that Pazuzu's stories started to get darker. He would ramble, usually high, about killing people. He told tales of murdering prostitutes, and some rumors even said he claimed to eat their bodies before burning the remains in a fire pit. His friends, usually as intoxicated as he was, just brushed it all off as drug-fueled fantasies, the ramblings of a man desperate for attention. What they didn't realize was that Pazuzu was telling the truth. The house at 2749 Nob Hill Drive was becoming a literal house of horrors. Inside, the filth was unbelievable. Trash was piled knee-high, and the floors were covered in animal carcasses and feces. The smell was so bad that a housing inspector later had to wear a protective mask just to go inside. Pazuzu would reportedly relieve himself in the corners of the house right in front of everyone. The walls were scrawled with satanic symbols and graffiti. The whole property just radiated decay. Neighbors were terrified. They put up with the constant loud music, the stream of sketchy people at all hours, and the horrific smells drifting from the property. They called the police over and over, but for years it seemed like nothing was done. The authorities knew about Pazuzu, but they often treated the calls as simple neighborhood disputes. But the red flags went way beyond the state of the house. Pazuzu was building a rap sheet. In 2010, he was convicted as an accessory after the fact in the shooting death of a man named Joseph Emmerich Chandler. Pazuzu's friend was the killer, but Pazuzu helped hide him. For that, he got 5 years of probation. There were also domestic assaults. Both Pazuzu and his girlfriend Amber Birch had been convicted in separate incidents of assaulting his mother, Cynthia. In 2011, Pazuzu even pleaded guilty to choking her. And yet Cynthia stayed in the house, later saying she was terrified of her son and his religious practices. The rumors about bodies buried in the backyard weren't just whispers among Pazuzu's friends. People were telling the police. As early as 2009, a woman told a detective her father had been at the house and saw what he thought was a body in the basement. She even said he told her he'd helped bury dismembered body parts in the yard. The information was shocking, but it was dismissed as secondhand hearsay. Then, in 2010, another tip. The ex-girlfriend of a missing man named Josh Wetzler reported him missing and told police she'd heard a rumor he was buried in Pazuzu's backyard. This time, investigators got a search warrant. They searched the property with cadaver dogs but found nothing. They left empty-handed, likely walking right over the graves they were looking for. Despite the filth, the violence, the public claims of murder, and direct tips, the truth of what was happening on Nob Hill Drive stayed buried. For 5 years, the house on Nob Hill Drive continued to fester. The legend of Pazuzu grew, but the disappearances of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch remained cold cases. After the failed police search in 2010, it seemed like the rumors were officially dead. Pazuzu seemed untouchable. But in the fall of 2014, things started to change. New leads brought investigators back to the house, and this time the information was too credible to ignore. In late September, a woman named Dixie Ross gave detectives a horrifying first-hand account. She said that back in October 2009, Amber Birch had texted her to come over. When she got there, Birch smiled and chillingly announced, "I just did my first." Ross told investigators that a terrified Birch had her help dig a hole in the backyard. She even recounted a grisly detail. As they were digging, Birch put on the shoes of the man she had just killed, Tommy Dean Welch, and sang, "I'm wearing a dead man's shoes," over and over. Around the same time, another piece fell into place. Pazuzu's mother, Cynthia, had a falling out with Amber Birch. Perhaps out of anger, Cynthia went to the sheriff's office. She told deputies that back in late 2009, she had heard a gunshot in the house. She walked out of her room and saw Amber Birch holding a rifle, and Tommy Dean Welch slumped on the couch. But when deputies said they needed to question Pazuzu, her cooperation stopped. Armed with this new, corroborated information, investigators knew they finally had what they needed. On October 5, 2014, deputies swarmed 2749 Nob Hill Drive with a new search warrant, determined to unearth the truth. They arrested Pazuzu Algarad and Amber Birch. The search began, a grim process that would last for days. Using heavy equipment and archaeologists, they started digging up the backyard, the same ground they had searched years before. It didn't take long. In shallow graves, they found the skeletal remains of 2 people. The dark rumors were no longer rumors. The discovery of skeletons in a suburban backyard sent a shockwave through Clemens. The remains were quickly identified. They belonged to 32-year-old Joshua Frederick Wetzler, who vanished in July 2009, and 31-year-old Tommy Dean Welch, who disappeared in October 2009. For their families, it was a devastating confirmation of their worst fears, but it was also the end of 5 years of not knowing. As the investigation continued, the ugly details of their last moments came out. The medical examiner found that both men had been shot to death. Warrants alleged that Pazuzu Algarad shot Joshua Wetzler with a .22 caliber rifle in July 2009. An autopsy showed Wetzler had been shot multiple times. His girlfriend, Amber Birch, then helped him bury the body. Just 3 months later, the roles were reversed. Amber Birch shot Tommy Dean Welch twice in the head as he sat on the living room couch. Pazuzu then helped her bury Welch in a shallow grave that used to be a fire pit. The cruelty of it all was staggering. These murders happened while Pazuzu's mother, Cynthia, was in the house. She later admitted to hearing the gunshots that killed Wetzler, and even seeing her son standing over the body. Instead of calling the police, she just went back to her room and got ready for work. She was never charged with any crime. A third accomplice was also identified: Crystal Nicole Matlock, another friend of the couple. Warrants claimed Matlock had helped bury Wetzler's body after Pazuzu killed him. The picture that emerged was of a twisted, isolated group, bound by drugs and a complete disregard for human life. They killed 2 men and then just went on with their lives, partying just feet from where their victims lay buried. The house itself was condemned, deemed unfit for human habitation. In April 2015, relieved neighbors set up lawn chairs to watch as a track hoe tore the House of Horrors down, reducing it to rubble in less than 2 hours. With the bodies found and the arrests made, Pazuzu Algarad's reign was over. He was charged with the murder of Joshua Wetzler and as an accessory in the murder of Tommy Dean Welch. Amber Birch was charged with murdering Welch and being an accessory in Wetzler's death. Their associate, Crystal Matlock, was charged with being an accessory after the fact. But Pazuzu Algarad would never face a jury. On October 28, 2015, almost exactly a year after his arrest, guards at Central Prison in Raleigh found the 36-year-old dead in his cell. He had bled to death from a deep, self-inflicted wound on his arm. The instrument he used was never found. He escaped judgment, taking the full extent of his secrets with him. With Pazuzu gone, the courts focused on his co-conspirators. On March 9, 2017, Amber Birch pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and other charges. As part of a plea deal, she was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison. A few months later, on June 5, 2017, Crystal Matlock also took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit accessory after the fact and received a much lighter sentence of 3 to 4 years in prison. And just like that, the legal chapter of the Nob Hill horror story was closed. But the scars on the community are still there. The empty lot where the house once stood is a quiet reminder of the evil that grew there, right under everyone's noses. It's a chilling look at how easily a system can fail when warnings aren't pieced together in time.